Welcome to the No One Ever Told Me podcast, where we talk about the things that no one ever tells you that you really need to know to be successful and to thrive in business and in leadership. If you're a season 1 listener, welcome back. If this is the first time you've listened to the podcast, thanks for being here. Season 1 had a unique focus on Nashville-based entrepreneurs and executives, which is great because I love this city and I love how Nashville attracts dreamers and doers and makers. But the world is filled with gifted leaders who don't call Nashville home, and just like I encourage you guys to step into new and scary and the no one ever told me parts of your leadership journey, I had some of that to do on my own. To be honest, I was not looking forward to a remote recording guest. It gave me some anxiety. I love the synergy of the in-person interviews. They feel more like conversations, but the technology kind of freaked me out on the recording side. But I knew these conversations were too important to limit the content just to local guests. And even though I've worked to widen the leadership circle, my hope for you in this second season hasn't changed one bit from where this podcast started. Every leader is facing or will face a challenge that they're not prepared for. And the only way forward is through. And I want these conversations to encourage you to know that others have been where you've been and felt what you've felt, and they've made it through, and so can you. But before we jump fully into season 2, I wanted to open us up with a little leadership nugget. In the break following the end of season 1, I had time to start something I hadn't done before. I started running trails. Now, trail runners are a lot like CrossFit athletes. And you know the first rule of CrossFit, right? Talk about CrossFit. Well, officially, this is me talking about trail running. Road running has been a part of my health routine for about 15 years, but I don't really know anything about trail running. I don't have a beard or trail shoes, and I don't have like one gadget from REI. But when I run on the road, I pride myself on consistent mile times. If it was 2 miles or 6 or whatever, I work to keep my pace as steady as possible. It made my runs predictable, and that made my morning schedule stay on track. Well, after about 2 weeks of running trails, I noticed this trend in the run data that really bothered me at first. The data showed that I got really slow when these 3 challenges happened. When the uphill got too intense, when the downhill got too intense, and when there was unsure footing, when the terrain, the rocks, and the roots got overwhelming. At first, this inconsistent pace bothered me. I hated looking back at the run data and seeing how slow my pace was for those challenging parts of the run. But it occurred to me that the slower pace was an instinct. It was an intuition. I don't think I decided to go slow. Slowing down was probably more of a self-preservation mechanism. I immediately thought about how this applies to leading teams. If you want to lead with a predictable, steady pace, you probably should lead in a steady, predictable industry or a consistent, steady organization. No one will fall off the trail, but you probably won't see epic results and intense momentum. But if you're leading in a fast-paced organization with crazy swings, uphill and downhill seasons, and unsure footing that's often unpredictable or unreliable, and probably even scary, you might need to learn how to lead with different paces. Here's what I mean. Not everybody on your team can go uphill fast. And not everybody on your team can go downhill safely, and not everybody on the team is sure they want to go fast on unsure footing. Everyone's heard this phrase, pace of the leader, pace of the team. And leading in these moments requires self-awareness, not to only know your pace, but to know the required pace to lead your team through these challenges. But for me, here's the killer. How do you lead teams through challenges on the trail without losing momentum? You know, I think it's possible to go too slow, and any leader can grind a team to a halt to navigate rough waters. But I think it's a real leadership gift to know how to coach your team through those tough times in your organization and not lose sight of the mission. So 3 quick thoughts on navigating leadership pace. Number 1, begin with the end in mind. If today you know a successful trail run is simply making it back to your car safely, that goal will impact how you take on the challenges on the trail. But if today's goal is to push yourself and run for a personal best, then that goal has certain requirements on the trail as well. If you have a clear mission and vision and clear goals for your team, you'll be better prepared to lead through those tough spots on the trail. Number 2, if you fall, get back up. A few weeks ago, I had run about 2 miles away from my car, so I had 2 miles to get back to my car. But I had my first epic trail run fall, and I was covered in blood and mud, and immediately my knee swelled up to the size of a lemon. I had a choice in that moment. I could walk and limp back to the car, and it might take me about an hour, or I could push through the pain and humiliation of falling and get it over with in about 20 minutes. Being home in a chair with an ice pack on my leg was all I could think about, and so I pushed through and I made it home. So in order to get results, you gotta pick yourself up, you gotta dust yourself off, and even if you fail, you gotta keep going. And number 3, you've probably heard this before too. If you wanna go fast, go alone. If you wanna go far, go with people. Leading an organization will require clear direction, but in any fast-moving organization, you have to be nuanced in the turns. You gotta cast vision, coach your team up, and help them get through the uncertainty on the trail. So that's it for now. We'll start the interviews next week. So in the meantime, catch up on any season 1 episodes you might have missed. Please share the podcast with a friend so you too can explore the leadership takeaways together. And as always, thanks for joining me on the No One Ever Told Me podcast.